and Outreach for iEARN-USA. Thank you, Nicole. Appreciate that. And so I want to welcome you to the iEARN-USA info session and about engaging your students in global projects. As I mentioned, I'm the Director of Global Education and Outreach, and I'd also have my colleague here today, Nicole Weitzner, who is our Manager of Membership Support. And then also one of our Global Education Ambassadors, Catherine Cordy, who is also an active teacher here to answer some of your questions later on in the session about what it really looks like to be in iEARN projects. This information session is intended for educators who are interested in how you can join our global learning community, how you can connect your classroom to other classrooms across the world through our projects. And I know that we have some folks here who met us at the National Council for Social Studies conference, and so welcome from there, and then a few of you from Cultural Vistas. So we're glad that you could join us, and hope that this is really a helpful session for you. Before we jump in, I'm going to ask you please to stay on mute if possible. If you're not speaking, we will have time later in the session where you could where you can come off mic and ask questions specifically. If you have questions as we go along, if you'll please type them in the chat box, and we'll try to answer them as we go along, but we'll definitely take time to go back at the end of the session and make sure that we've covered everything. And then I'd like to invite you right now to type in the chat box where you're joining us from, what ages or grade levels you work with, and if you're an educator, then what subject that you teach. And so I'm going to let you know where I'm coming from today. Sure that you're typing to everyone. I am not seeing chats come through, so I'm hoping everybody is hearing me okay. Aha, there they come, a couple. Can I get a thumbs up from folks to confirm that you're hearing us? Daisy, I see you. Can you hear us clearly?
Oh, I think she's on mute.
You're on mute, but you could give me a thumbs up. Okay, so you can hear us. And are you able to type in the chat? I see Anika just did. Just making sure everybody is on clearly.
And I'll just jump in as well, because I know some of you are actually originally from other countries other than the US, so feel free to share that as well if you'd like.
Yes, that'd be great. Thank you very much, Nicole. Okay, so we will get started. Oh my goodness, my computer is being slow. Sorry about that. There we go. The first thing that we wanted to share with you is this statistic that is showing you about the fact that students in the United States have very limited opportunities to have international exchanges and travel abroad. And so connecting with students and learning from other communities that are different from their own is something that they aren't able to usually do on a day-to-day basis. Recent studies on global competencies for the United States show that high school students think that global communication and knowledge is important, but they don't feel like they're adequately prepared for it in school or have the opportunities to do that. Outside of school, opportunities for international exchanges are limited, and few U.S. students get the chance to study abroad before college. But we also know that these global competence skills are critical for students' career readiness and to prepare them for globalization in the world. So, iEARN wants to think about, what if every student, regardless of their age or geography, could have this meaningful international exchange? What would it look like if regardless of where they were, regardless of their economic means, regardless of the other barriers, they could have that exchange and that work. And so, Nicole, I am going to pass this off to you to talk a little bit more about what that might look like.
Thank you, Connie. So this question and vision that Connie just mentioned was really central to the beginnings of iEARN, which stands for the International Education Resource Network. And iEARN was actually established back in 1988 during the height of the Cold War as a pilot project between 12 schools in New York and 12 schools in Moscow. The founder, Peter Koppen, thought, what if we connected students in the US with students in Moscow, and they got to know one another while working together on a project? Would this possibly, lead them to better understand one another and develop friendships and ultimately contribute to building a more peaceful planet? So they tried it. And in the first collaborative project, students worked in both English and Russian on a curriculum-based project designed by participating teachers. They used the technology available at that time, which actually was before the internet. So they used a large machine called a Lumaphone, which is in that news clipping you see, to communicate with one another. And what is most important to you to know right now is that our global network has grown exponentially since then, as has our ability to connect online and collaborate. This past school year, we connected almost 3,000 teachers and around 70,000 students from 116 countries to work together on global projects. So iEARN, again, the International Education Resource Network, is now a robust K-12 educational network that enables students, teachers, and schools to connect online and collaborate on projects that tie classroom learning to real-world issues. In the same spirit as our global network, iEARN-USA is guided by the vision of an interconnected, peaceful, and just world. More specifically, we work in line with our mission to develop and empower an inclusive global community of students and educators who bridge cultural divides and work together to make a meaningful difference in the world. So we'd like to now show you a brief video that outlines and shows you how our global projects actually work.
Have you ever wanted to connect your students with the rest of the world? Since 1988, iEARN has been doing just that. Students are crossing international borders and jumping language barriers to collaborate on global projects across subjects like math, creative writing, art, science, and history. A safe and secure online platform called the Collaboration Center. Students and teachers participate in dialogue and hands-on collaboration with others from around the world. iEARN helps educators connect and communicate with other teacher students around the world using interactive technologies, engage students in subjects through creative collaboration with their peers in other countries, and empower students to take action and make contributions to their local and global communities. Interested in world not just about it? Join us at collaborate.iEARN.org.
So in addition to connecting students learning with local issues and meeting specific curriculum needs, every project proposed by teachers and students in iEARN has to answer the question, how will this project improve the quality of life on the planet? This vision and purpose is the glue that holds iEARN together, enabling participants to become global citizens who make a difference by collaborating with their peers around the world. In 2015, iEARN mobilized its global network to realize the world's 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs, a set of targets relating to international development, and to ensure that each iEARN project aligned with at least one of these. Therefore, through collective learning and action, students are really making a difference with iEARN projects that meet global sustainable development goals to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure prosperity for all. We would like to highlight learning circles as our recommended first project experience for teachers and students who are new to iEARN. And this is because they're highly interactive project exchanges on a variety of topics across grade levels. Participants are matched with 4 to 5 other classrooms around the world to form each circle. And there are a variety of different circles. So Hello World Learning Circles is the 5-week learning circle designed for beginners. It introduces the basics of online projects, making them an excellent way to train your students on iEARN collaboration while making cultural connections. The next round of learning circles actually begins on January 30th, so you'll want to be sure to register to become a member of iEARN-USA before then. In the theme-based learning circles, teachers and students identify and implement a classroom project related to the theme, then gain input and feedback from partner classrooms before developing a final product. Learning circles are guided by facilitators along each step of the process. There are nearly 100 projects in iEARN, though, and they're all designed and facilitated by teachers and students to fit their curriculum and classroom needs and schedules. They're all proposed as well by teachers. They primarily involve asynchronous interaction due to differing time zones around the world. So students are posting on the project message boards in our collaboration center, which houses all the projects in a safe and secure monitored online space. Classrooms also participate in synchronous video conference sessions when it's possible. We will share the project book link now in the chat so you can peruse our projects at your own convenience. I'll do that quickly here. Most iEARN projects have 3 main components, and these are classroom activities, exchange activities, and sharing work and taking action pieces. So I'll kind of go through these to help you envision what an iEARN project looks like in your classroom. So the classroom activities are project activities that you would do in your classroom or give as assignments or homework to your students. These might look like research, class discussions, media, or product creation and presentations. Also, while this is happening or potentially following some of the classroom activities you implement are the exchange activities. And this is where your students would be communicating and collaborating with other classrooms around the world. They would be posting and responding to other students in the online forums, sharing their media and classroom work, giving and receiving feedback, and potentially video conferencing as well. And at the end or towards the end of the project, there is always a take action or sharing work part of it where students take action on global issues and share their work in some way, whether that might be sharing a final product with their partners, displaying work in their school, doing a project or hosting an event for the local community, or presenting at our yearly virtual project exhibition, which we hold every May, and all iEARN students and teachers are invited to submit their project work and potentially have their students present to a global audience virtually at the exhibition. So I'll hand it back now to Connie to share a bit about the culture and content connections that iEARN projects make. I'd also love to invite you again to type any questions you might have at this point in the chat box, and we'll get to them as soon as we can. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. So Nicole has told you a little bit about how our projects worked, and I wanted to give you some examples of projects that we have that you might utilize. I know several of you are part of the Cultural Vistas program where you need to do exchanges with your classroom with your home countries, and these give you some structured ways to think about what those exchanges might be. The Places and Perspectives, My Hero, and One Day in the Life projects are wonderful and effective ways to introduce your students to other cultures and to learn about them in an authentic way through the eyes and experiences of their global classmates. And so when you think about that, in these projects, students share about their daily lives, their cultures, and the people and places where they live. And then they also do this through writing, research, photography, videos, artwork, and more. iEARN projects are interdisciplinary and connect learners across different age groups, and different projects tie differently to different subject areas. So we cover creative and language arts, social sciences, and STEM, the science, technology, art piece as well. So some projects happen in multiple languages, and here you can see some examples of projects that have been aligned with some common core standards. Water is Life lends itself to science and social studies. Girl Rising lends itself to social studies, language arts. Our International Book Club is one that is good with language arts and technology. Earth Stewardship focuses well on science. Finding Solutions to Hunger could be social studies or science or language arts. And our World Heritage focuses well for social studies and for civics courses. What I want to do now is I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to introduce you to Catherine Cordy, who is our Global Education Ambassador and active teacher. And she's going to tell you a little bit more about what it's like to be actively involved in projects and her experiences.
Great. Thank you so much for the introduction. Hello, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and pull up some information to kind of share with you. And let me get this going here. All right. Okay, so okay, I think that is sharing now. Okay, so I work at Pattonville High School, which is in Missouri, around the St. Louis area. And I've been teaching for 15 years. And gosh, I think I've been with iEARN for at least 8 years now. It's been a minute. Some of the projects I have worked on, or some of the courses I've used iEARN projects in, are Modern World History, which is my 10th graders, Anthropology, an elective course that's 9-12. And even when I sponsored the International Club, we would do projects through club as well. So there's lots of different areas. So Modern World History is a core content area. It's a required class. Anthropology is an elective class. And of course, a club is something kids volunteer for. So I've used it in many different kind of content areas. Collaborating countries, we've worked with students and teachers in Moldova, Algeria, Tunisia, Taiwan, Mali, Argentina, just to name a handful. And the kids always get very excited to kind of work with others, with their peers from other countries. Projects that I've worked with the learning circles, and I would highly, highly recommend them because they are so structured. So if you're starting out, it can be a little intimidating to kind of navigate a project or to understand how you're going to kind of put the pieces together. And the learning circles are so highly supported. They're well structured. There's an outline, there are guidelines, there are supportive materials, there are templates that you can use. So each step of the process is usually kind of like an assignment, and you'll get a certain amount of time to complete the assignment, and then templates to help you with that assignment. So for example, like you have like 2 weeks to introduce yourself and your students into the course. And then there is a form that you can download, and you gather information from your students. You can upload the form, or you can make a video, or you can do a PowerPoint. If you want to kind of do something else, there's flexibility to do that. But if you're like, man, what do I do? You get the very specific directions to engage in the project. So I think with the learning circles, I have done global issues, places, and perspectives, and the My Hero project within the learning circle context, and they've worked out really, really wonderfully. I've also done the teddy bear project, and it might be surprising because I teach high school kids, and in the teddy bear project, you are partnered with another school. So you go on the forum, you kind of fill out a little form saying like where you're at and what you're interested in, like grade level wise, and then you'll get partnered with another school, and you exchange some sort of like stuffed animal. So it says teddy bears, but one year we sent students in Taiwan an alligator. They sent us a unicorn named Blair. It's just, that's kind of the fun part about it, is you just get these boxes, and usually there's like cards and the animal in it, the stuffed animal. And then my students will be assigned the stuffed animal. We call them an exchange student for a certain amount of time, and they have to take images and pictures of them with their, let me kind of jump to these pictures. Here's an example of that right here. So So the students then take pictures that kind of document what they're doing, and then they have to create like posts, and where you kind of share out the material. You can share it out on iEarn, or you can do like a Google document if you want to do another collaborative document that you then post in iEarn, and allows you to kind of share that context. So what I really love about this project in particular, allows for a lot of organic conversations to come up. Like, one, the kids love having the stuffed animal and they take them everywhere. Kids love their phones, they're taking pictures, they're using technology, but we have lots of conversations about how to explain things in context. So it's a really great language tool to how to explain something. Like in the United States, we have homecoming at high schools. Like, how do you explain homecoming to somebody? We have band classes, or cafeterias, that we have lunch at school. The kids don't go home for lunches. That's unusual for a lot of places. So having to explain this really allows them to investigate their own culture and the own rationale for why we do things, and then gets kids curious about why somebody else lives it in a different way than they do. So one is also definitely recommend, which this one's kind of funny too. Let me see, jump ahead here. So in the alternate reality project, you would kind of take a photo of a student who becomes like your ambassador, and you kind of post it online, and then students download that person and put them, like Photoshop them into their school. So for example, we were working with a school from Argentina. This student is Brian. And so this student here is not from my school. So he got Photoshopped into homecoming. And then the students had to explain a little bit about why, like what is happening in this picture. We also Photoshopped this student from Argentina into our anthropology class. And my students had to explain a little bit about like how class works in our school, and talk about like what we're learning about in that context, while we have this like student photoshopped in there. And then same thing, we sent an image of one of our kids to the class in Argentina, and then they would Photoshop our kids into different classes and explain that. So it's this really kind of great way for kids to see and experience things from, like, learn from their peers. Products outcomes, we've done all sorts of things. So we have done posters, and the students have made videos, and they've done journals, they've done infographics, essays, they have created podcasts, and a lot of reflective writing is a part of the process too. So all sorts of different ways to kind of connect to whatever product outcome or skill you're working on while doing iEARN projects. Let's see. Okay, just a couple quotes of what iEARN work has meant for my students. So so when they do reflective work, I asked them to think about like what skills, what are they gaining from this experience? So some of my students have said that communicating with diverse audiences is so important, because it allows them to, I get that that global problems need global solutions, and that good ideas are not limited to one specific culture. I kind of love that one as an idea, as a takeaway. Another student talked a little bit more about, again, about perspective, all right, that it makes you a little bit more open-minded and gives you an understanding that you wouldn't have otherwise had through these exchange experiences. Another student discussed how, and I like this ending part, then maybe you will not judge because you have an understanding behind it. So we talk a lot about like context and people that live in space and time and context, and the kids get that a little bit more because they're so used to their own learning environment, their own languages, their own cultures, that it gives them a chance to step back and see how other people live and act, and can understand them through their own lens. And that's where kind of this last quote comes from. All right. I have not had a lot of communication with other people in different countries. We talked about how like only one student in like 10,000 will have an exchange experience. My knowledge comes from textbooks or teachers, never really from people that actually live there. So for her to kind of feel like this is authentic learning, I'm not getting it secondhand or third hand, I'm getting it right from someone there, has been like really rich learning experience for my kids. So I think that it's kind of what I want to talk about in terms of the projects I've been, the countries we worked with, a little sampling of the work that students have done. and just some of their thoughts and reflections on their experiences have been really, really positive. In terms of how do you make it work with your curriculum, I think anytime you're dealing with, for my standards, like history, geography, language development, critical thinking skills, this all embeds and aligns with that pretty easily. So there's always avenues of access to align your projects with your curriculum. Okay.
Thank you so much, Catherine. And we're going to go back to, and let me get this screen back up again, our presentation. And oops, hang on just a minute. Okay. And talk a little bit about these outcomes. And Catherine, I'd love for you to jump in here too. And you've showed some of those quotes, but iEARN 5 outcomes for global competence. We look at connecting as a global community. We look at developing communication skills with these diverse audiences, the openness and respect that she was talking about with other cultures and perspectives, collaborative action. And iEARN really emphasizes that collaborative piece. We want students to take action on global issues or issues that are happening in their local communities, but also thinking about how they can collaborate with other people, either in their own community or across the world. And then just developing that culture of caring for each other and the planet. And Catherine, I'd love for you to jump in here and talk about what that's looked like in your classroom.
Okay. I think when it comes to the first one, connect with and become a part of a global community, what the projects have really done for my students is sparked a genuine curiosity about the world. Oftentimes when we start a project, the kids are unfamiliar with maybe the country, unfamiliar with the region. So one of the first things we do is I'll have the kids do, we have a database at school called Culturegrams, and it allows you to investigate peoples and countries and learn about their languages and their holidays and their religions. So once we find out what schools we're going to be partnering with, I typically have them do a Culturegram assignment where they learn about the peoples, like where they're from, and get a general understanding about geography and history and language and culture. And then we often also use Google Maps, and we'll kind of zoom in. Like, even once we get the address of the school, we'll just zoom in right into the neighborhood, and then we're just exploring. We're seeing, what's outside the school. We're checking out the courtyard. We're seeing how close they are to like a park, or is there any sort of like natural features? And we're starting to ask a lot of questions. So what it helps you is just, it understands, it creates a sense of genuine curiosity. Kids really, once they get a sense of this place, they want to know more. And it kind of opens it for kids to kind of go and journey to this other place they haven't been and interact with students they haven't done before. So I think that's one of the big things, is this organic and authentic conversations and creating a curiosity and wonder about the world that they might not have had. And then with the communication piece, it's huge. So the example I always get is, I had one of my students, we live in St. Louis, Missouri. We have a baseball team called the Cardinals. And when we were working with a school in Taiwan, it was an all-girls private Catholic school. And one of my students was introducing himself. He's like, "Hey, my name is Aaron. I'm a huge Cardinals fan." So I was like, okay, before we send that, let's break this down a little bit. Like, how might someone else, I'm like, interpret your words of, "I am a huge Cardinals fan"? I'm like, I understand what you're saying because we live in St. Louis and I know you're talking about the Cardinals professional baseball team. I'm like, can you name one professional team in Taiwan? And he was like, no. I'm like, okay. So what makes you think that kids in Taiwan can know the St. Louis Cardinals? Like, probably not. So then it got him rethinking about his language and his word choices. And then he finally ends up with, okay, "Hi, my name is Aaron. I love the sport of baseball. My favorite team is the local professional team, which is the St. Louis Cardinals." And then he would like send them a link to their website or include a picture. And then he starts talking about how he plays baseball at our high school and what position he plays. So it went from this one statement that could be very confusing to finally you saw this light bulb go off of like, oh, all right, I need to present myself in a way in which multiple people can understand and access it. So that communication skill, it's so critical. And then you could see from my students' quotes that it really got them connecting and being open to other people's thoughts and ideas. All right, it's developing that empathy, which is so crucial in education these days. And then being able to kind of, share those ideas with their peers. They really kind of enjoy and engage in the projects.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that perspective from the live classroom. So the next thing I want to talk about is how we foster network connections within our group. And global educator hangouts are something we've been doing for quite some time. We host them about every 2 months. And it's a space where educators can come and meet other educators and find partners for their classroom and to do projects with, but also where they can get a chance to talk with other educators about what's happening in their classrooms and best practices. We usually do a very brief 10 or 15-minute tiny training, and it might have to do with how to get your kids to talk to each other more robustly in the discussion chats, or how to respond more robustly. It might be, how can you get your kids registered on the platform? It's just a really short training. And then we have a chance for project facilitators who attend these educator hangouts to tell you a little bit about the projects that they're inviting educators to join. And finally, we do some breakout sessions where educators just get to talk to educators, and they can choose to talk, hey, do you want to do a project together? Or they may just talk about what's going on in your classroom and here's something that I'm working on, and really get to know each other across the world. In classrooms meetups, that's something new that we actually started in 2022. And so you might do a meetup within your project with a video conference with another classroom, and we certainly have the capacity to help facilitate that. But as you can imagine, sometimes time zone differences make that a challenge. And so we have started hosting these classroom meetups about once a quarter. We did one around Earth Day last year, and it gave students a chance to come. We had 60 students from 10 different classes come and talk about the environment and to talk about the issues that are happening locally in their community and what actions they were taking or wanted to encourage each other to take. Project creation: once you have become an iEARN educator, you can propose and be a facilitator of an iEARN project. And so I especially wanted to mention that specifically for our friends who are joining us from the Cultural Vistas group, because if you have classes in other countries that you want to connect, in your own home countries that you want to connect with, and you want to set up a cultural exchange, we can help you do that on our platform. And then we do have conferences from time to time. The last one we had was in Westchester a couple of years ago. And my understanding is that we are planning one for 2024. I think it's going to be in the country of Georgia or Morocco. And so our iEARN educators are invited to join us in person at iEARN conferences. iEARN-USA has really worked to create a roadmap that's going to support you as you start your exchange journey. And so we have iEARN 101, which is more of an introduction that we go a little bit deeper into what the global competencies are, into the Sustainable Development Goals, and giving you some background knowledge about that. But more explicitly, we're working a little bit too on how you can prepare for global virtual exchange. You're going to explore how you set up your hands-on activities and guidelines and expectation setting for your students, and introductions to activities that you can do with them. Then you move into your project work or learning circle. And as I said, as we've mentioned a couple of times here, we're really encouraging you to do those learning circles the first round for the structure that is available there. In iEARN 102, you work on aligning your projects with your learning objectives and think about guiding your students to sharing and presenting and reflecting on their exchange experience within our community. In addition to these trainings, as I mentioned, we have the Global Educator Hangouts that gives you a chance to connect with the other educators across the world. We also want to mention that at iEARN-USA that we work with the U.S. Department of State with 2 funded scholarship exchange programs for U.S. high school students. And so the NSLI, which is National Security Language Initiative for Youth program, students go abroad for a semester or a year to learn critical languages that are not commonly taught here in the United States. They live with a host family, and they also attend high school in that country. Students in the Youth Exchange and Study Abroad program go abroad for a year in select country, usually with significant Muslim populations, and they live with host families and attend school and participate in cultural activities. Nicole's putting some links in the chat now for you where you would be able to learn more about those programs. So we want to give you our contact information. We're also going to put that in the chat in a minute, but I'd like to stop sharing here for a minute because we're really going to open this up now for Q&A. And I want to be able to see you. Hang on just a minute. There we go. Okay. So I really want to just get a chance to answer any questions that you might have, and give you a chance to ask what you need to. Catherine, we had one question that got sent to us earlier, and it was, how much time commitment would you say a teacher needs to put into iEARN projects?
Sure, that's a really great question. And I think a lot of it is, the answer is whatever you need. So there is enough flexibility that if you need to do a short-term project, you can. I've gone on iEARN platform to just pull ideas and comments. So I've used it as just a resource space where we would go in and maybe look at some of the youth conversations or some of the projects that have been posted and use that as an example for something we're working in class. So I've just used it as an exploration tool, something I just need for 15 minutes in class. And it's like we've done some of the learning circle projects where it was, a 10-12 week commitment. The schools, everyone has a different kind of school schedule. So that's what I really like about iEARN is that there's a lot of flexibility. And if you can't meet everything in there, you just say it. So you're like, okay, I know that this project goes to this point, but we get out for school, summer break at this point. So we're going to be wrapping up our project here. And that's fine. There's a lot of flexibility and support to kind of make it what you need it. So I think if you come in with an open mind, you'll find the platform is really user-friendly. The other thing I did want to touch on is I saw, some teachers working in special education community. And this was one of the really big surprises for me working with iEARN, is my students who had an individual education plan in IEP, how much they enjoyed working in these projects was surprised, especially when kids would be talking on the student forums or kind of doing, chats back and forth with other students. They were asynchronous, they weren't at the same time. But this one student that I had, he would just run into classroom, throw open his computer and instantly check it, even if it wasn't an iEARN day. Like he would just want to on his own, because he felt it was a very safe, non-judgmental space. So he did not maybe share out a lot in class because he maybe felt a bit insecure, but in this space, in this forum where kids didn't know him, didn't have like any previous judgments about him, he loved being able to ask questions. He loved getting responses. And that really surprised me. I wasn't expecting that, but I thought that was just really great, as in like, it's a very inclusive environment. There's no judgment. When you're preparing kids to engage in conversations, you talk about that, especially for myself, because we have all native language English speakers. So we talk a lot about you can't really pass judgments about how people are writing in English because they're learning the language. So I think that felt really good for my kids who are struggling with language processing, that this is great. Then I'm not going to be judged on my language skills either. And so I feel really confident to share my ideas. So I think there is a unique avenue for teachers in special education to use the platform as well.
Thanks for that. Any questions from our audience this evening? We hope that means that you're excited about joining iEARN projects and thinking about doing that. It's really easy to join the iEARN network, and Nicole is going to put the link for that in the chat now, so you will be able to connect. There is a membership fee for teachers to join our global network, and So oftentimes teachers are able to obtain funding for that from their schools, from local parent-teacher associations, or possibly from an education foundation and through grants. And so we encourage you to think about that. Their fee is $250 per classroom, up to 35 students. If you are a Cultural Vistas group and you have someone in another country, please let us know and reach out to us directly. As I said, Nicole's going to share our emails also in the chat, but please reach out to me directly. I'm Connie, and ask me about that, because it would be you joining, but also most likely the person in the other country joining would be all part of that same membership. And so check with us, because we can easily connect you with people in other countries. We have iEARN centers in about 26 countries around the world. And as Nicole mentioned, we had educators from about 116 countries last year. So we very well may have an iEARN network already back in your home country. So let us know about that. If you were at the National Conference for Social Studies, you have had some special emails in the last couple of weeks. And so please be sure to look at that information about the special offer that's available to you through tomorrow afternoon. Nicole, is there anything else you'd like to add before we close out?
I think you said most of it. I think for those who are coming from Cultural Vistas, I know we're going to let them know they might want to reach out to Carolyn Gillum at Cultural Vistas as well, if you're interested in joining iEARN, as she wanted to kind of keep a tab on who might be interested. So also do that. But yeah, I think you covered it. And Catherine, it was so wonderful to hear directly from you and just about what iEARN projects have meant for you and your students. Always so inspired and by you and them. So thank you for sharing all that.
Thanks, everyone. We hope everyone has a good evening. And again, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. We'll follow up with you in the next couple of days, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
You're very welcome.
Nicole, would you stop recording?
Sure.